Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon.
We will wait just for a few minutes and then we will start.
Sounds good. Let me see. Nikki. Let me see if I can send a message in the chat.
Okay.
Can everybody hear us okay?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Great.
Awesome. Awesome. I think we can get started then.
Okay. Okay, let's start. So, welcome everybody to this fifth session of the anti-pattern series. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, as speakers, we have Matthias and Juan Pablo, also known as Pela. Today, what are we going to do today? So, our speakers will discuss about four anti-patterns: the stranger, the operating system evangelist, success against all odds, and the free ride. Remember that if you have any kind of question or doubt, you can just write it in the chat and we will be reading them. So, Matthias?
Awesome. So thanks, Sophia. Thanks, Pela, for joining me today. Yeah, that's it. Just a little bit of preparation, not preparation, but quick tips. If you have any questions, just shoot them because usually I prefer to take them while in the subject rather than like waiting for. You can shoot that in the chat and that's it. But yeah, well, are you? Sounds good. Are you ready, Bella?
Yes, always ready
Always.
because I will listen to you, so I will relax here.
Let's do this. Okay, so let's get started. If you before we do any start with the content itself, I think it would be good. Sorry, I have my rubber duck. It would be just good to do a quick intro because I know Pela, you're like how can I say, you participated in the episode. I don't remember the name, the number 2, 3. You presented as well, but it would be good just for for the sake of recording to introduce yourself, and then I can go after you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the invite. Well, my name is Juan Pablo, and as Sofia presented me already, my people call me Pela. And yes, I'm working currently at SendMate, and I'm a software developer for long now, and now super happy to be here today. Thank you, Mateus.
Nice. And then we have Sophia.
Thank you, Codurance. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
continuous. And then we have Sophia as well that is hosting us. So Sophia that works at Codurance as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, I am a software developer too in Codurance. And yeah.
So that's it. So that's nice. So well, so today let's keep going on the anti patterns journey, and let's see how it goes. As Sophia mentioned, we are going to cover four more, and well, we are almost done. To be honest, we have this episode and the next one, and we are almost done. So before we get started with the actual anti-patterns for today, I would like to do a little bit of recap on what we saw in the last episode or so. So this is the fifth episode, and what we cover. So and this is the list of all the anti-patterns, right? And by the way, I don't know, Pela, do you recall anyone like the first one that comes to your mind?
Oh, I think the excessive setup.
Excessive setup. Oh,
Yeah.
nice. And yeah, so well, this is was covered as well. So those are all the anti-patterns that we covered. The excessive setup was in the last episode, I think. I don't remember the numbers, but we covered that as well. It is a pain. The excessive setup is a pain. And well, as you can see on the list, all the list that we have, the 22, we cover almost all of them. And today we're going to cover, actually, there'll be just two to go over in the next episode. And in the next episode, we are going we have a few other things to share as well regarding that. But well, that's what we covered. And regarding these talks, this series, and why we are doing that, is basically, if you're not aware of, we started with like the first episode was like a trial to see if it was a good idea or not. But we launched a survey to know what developers knew about anti-patterns, or if it was they were interested in anti-patterns, how they approach stuff like that. And well, since then we started to develop this series. The takeaways and why we're doing some this series are in technologies and stuff like that, is because we saw that not all of them are popular. So we see a lot of anti-patterns that are not popular. So while you're developing, you feel pain, or you just it's harder. You feel it's harder to test or to create a test. You take longer. So this anti-pattern series is to cover those situations and why they emerge. We are using like examples in PHP, JavaScript, Java. Not only that, we also had last episode in Python. Uh, we discovered that to learn TDD, and this is a good indication, usually we learn informally. So you don't go to the TDD school, right? I don't know. I haven't. I haven't met anyone that went to the let's say we say TDD school, but the London school, the Chicago school, but there is no offshore way. And also, the way that we are presenting stuff here is usually we go to open source projects, we read them, try to get our experience as well. So, what we see on the daily basis, the errors that we do, the interpretations that we do, we try to share here. So, basically, that's it. And what we did on the last episode, what we're going to try to keep on this episode. So, well, let's see. I think this is a representation from the most popular from the list. So, I think Pela mentioned excessive setup is the third one most popular. So those three are the most popular. So in the survey that we launched, we saw that those are the most popular anti-patterns. So well, that's an interesting one. But today, interesting enough, we are going to focus on this one, success against all odds. That is in the middle, not that popular. I would say like, oh, okay, people like developers can recall. The strange, that is even less. And the last two that no one can recall, because this question was, can you recall any of those anti-patterns? So the ones that we are going to present here, they are not that common. They're not that popular.
One
Okay.
thing, Mateus,
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think the free ride is quite common, but we don't know it by the name.
There you go. There you go. And we have some examples in the end that is really good, because this brings back, now that you mentioned, this brings back uh, the joke, or like the question, joke but not joke, around assertions, right? So I want to mention what it is. This is the last one that we're going to cover. But well, should you use just one assertion per test or not? I will leave for you to answer that later on. That's it. And let's get started. So the first one, the stranger. Uh, the stranger is it depends on the context, but usually the stranger is something that for me, when I'm doing practicing TDD, for me is an indication, like it's a code smell. Because usually you start to write the test and you don't know what you're start. Usually just a sketch, an idea, and you don't know if you should create like two classes, three classes, or whatever, or how you're going to implement. And what happens is in the flow, uh, what happens is you just shift the mindset to say, maybe I need this class and another class. And instead of focusing on the class that you want to test, so you start to diverge to test the second class, but it's still reference for the first class. Like one example that we were discussing before joining the session was the Demeter law. I think it's the Demeter law. Like when you have like dot dot dot, right? So you're going to start with the static code, and then you start to test one, and then you say, "Who I'm going to go over the other child, or I'm going to the other child," and you start with the mass. Where I'm saying that, giving these abstract examples, because the stranger, for me, is something like really hard to spot when you see the code. For example, it's hidden, and it's not often you don't see that something wrong. Like you're just going down the chain, you don't see like something wrong. Um, and what is the why this depends on the context? Why I'm saying that it depends on the context, because uh, they for me it's like I smell that something is not wrong, but you don't know why. So you can shift. You can shift a little bit. Say, okay, let's keep going and let's see what happens. And not just on the test code. We have also an example on the test file. We mentioned the Demeter law, but for example, I'm going to share the Jenkins source code. So for you that is familiar with the Jenkins, this is a piece of their code, and there is this class that is the enum test. So just scanning the code, and see the test. There is something that I see here that we start with enum test. So okay, so this should be some test on enum. So I want to test some behavior or something around the enum. But in reality, what you see here is not something related with the enum or whatsoever. You start to see some more serious tests on the form, or trying to go over other types of asserts, like assert equals, the select, or the val color, or whatever, or like that. So I'm not saying that this test is wrong. I'm not saying that this is not supposed to be like that. But the enum, like the name, for me is like this is something strange, right? So it's like a smell. Why this is enum? So should we rename this? Should we do that some other way around? Or the Demeter law that we start to do yellow, yellow, yellow name. What else I can mention on this strange? Is related to the smells, and then also mocks. So if you start to go over mocks, like verifying things is fine, but if you start to verify too much or going down the chain of the mocks or the behavior, so you see like a pattern that you want to test the mocked object, so not the one that is under the test, right? So that's why I'm saying that this is just like smells or like indications on that end. Um, so I don't know. So for this strange is this one. We are going to relate about this strange in the other examples that we have later on. I don't know if you want to add anything, just let me know, or if you have a question, just let me know right away. The next one is a bit more interesting. When I say interesting, I would like to ask a question. What do you think that is an operating system evangelist? Like could be Bella or Sophia, but what do you think that's an operating system evangelist? Realistically.
Well, for me, it's when you try to couple against an operating system. And for example, an example that comes to mind is when I was using C Sharp, the famous file path, and you have the C
Ah,
colon slash slash, right? And that is coupled to the operating system, for example.
there you go.
And maybe that if you run that in Linux, it's not going to work.
We got Sergio in the chat saying that this is strongly coupled to the environment of the operating system.
There
And
you go.
also
Exactly.
Javier is asking code that's platform couple.
Yeah, there you go. So I think my work is done here. So see you in the next episode. Bye. But yeah, totally, exactly. But one thing that I would like to share is that sometimes we don't know to which degree this couple can happen, right? So here, for example, I picked this Lutris wrapper. So if you are from Linux, Lutris is a famous project from Linux that aims to emulate Windows games on Linux, Windows games on Linux. But here they have a test, like do some trickery on the process, like listening to try to launch and like do some stuff with Bash. So if you see here, they rely a lot on the Linux environment, which makes sense. So we have Python, we have this join to find the where the Python is being executed. We have this sub process that actually is going to launch the process under the machine, like that's being executed, this code. And then we have here explicitly commands that are for Linux. So bash, dash C, and hello world, and so on and so forth. What I want to say, I picked this example exactly because I found that it's interesting, because at the same time, the Lutris project is aimed to run only on Linux, right? So which makes sense. Sometimes makes sense just to have this because it's a Linux project. But for example, this is a Linux project, but sometimes the context can change. So another example of this anti-pattern, like relying too much on the file system, is one related with what Pela said about the C#, like the file path. But here is a Golang. I was watching, skimming through Go, the Go repository, and I saw this issue that one developer was trying to port the application that they had from Linux to Windows. Sorry, from Windows to Linux. And the issue that they found were that the majority of the tests were failing because the new line is different for Linux and for Windows. So imagine that you just want your application to run on Windows or whatever, or Linux or Mac, and you see all the tests failing and you're trying to debug, and then find out that it's just because Linux and Windows, they use different new lines characters. And then you break all the things that you have. So why this is important? Because this is an indication, right? So this is a symptom that your tests or what you have, you're relying too much on the system, and how you can do to abstract that away to avoid those kind of this situation on the test and their production code. And here, what I'm saying that's a symptom, and we should avoid that, because here I will bring Jenkins again. Because Jenkins, I shared the IntelliJ earlier, but I didn't do like a git blame or whatever in the files. But if you see here, there is a comment. So they are using a system environment that depends on the system. Something in the system, not the Linux or Windows itself, but it depends on something on the system to be in place to run the test. And here they said to do later on to remove this dependency. Exactly because if you don't have this dependency, it's going to, I don't know, it can fail, or you have to do some trick like here to assume that the value is not what you might expect. And Bella mentioned the file system. We mentioned that in the local hero, because we relate that with the local hero, because this can happen in your machine, right? Because I'm sure that if you write the C# code or any code that relies on a file system, on a file inside your machine, your file system, it will work. But as soon as you move that along to another machine, you don't have this file, is another path, another place, it will fail. And here, this is a flashback from the other episode, the local hero, because this test suite that is in JavaScript, or this is just a video that was made just for test purpose. So this test suite will pass the first time. All the test suite will pass without any problem. But in the second run, it will fail. Sorry, because we don't pass in the env variable. So the next run, So if you see the command that we are using here is like HTTP blah 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 blah, and with this flag, it will make the test pass. So again, this is an indication that you're relying on not on a specific OS, but something that you should be aware of and switch a little bit the mindset, or to receive that as a dependency, invert dependency, right? So inject that and not rely on specific flags to be in place to run the tests.
I
So
have
we
a
just,
question here, Mateus, for you.
yeah, go ahead.
So, for example, if you have a tear down or an after reach, right,
Mhm.
in your test that is cleaning with an SQL script, for example,
Mhm.
are you doing this anti-pattern of operating system evangelist? Like you are relying on SQL and the platform instead of trying to clean with your code?
That's a good question. But in this case, I don't think so. It depends on the type of test that you're doing. So I assume that you're doing like an integration test because you're doing like this on the before each and after each. So I don't think so. But if we are talking about not integration test, but more like a unit where you would mock or do something to abstract that or use a in memory, let's say repository. So I don't think so. So I don't think so. Good one, by the way. And that's it. So the local hero, I would just share this one because we mentioned that on the episode 2. So you can go ahead and see the episode 2. It's here. So to go and have a look at the hero and now the evangelist, the operating system evangelist on your. Okay, so this one is interesting. Success against all odds. So this is another one, another candidate for. Uh, Actually, I didn't know what it meant, like success against all odds. And do you want to give a shot, Pela? Or
I think this one could be renamed more easily to false positives. Well,
Yeah,
this is what I understand.
I was
or something?
thinking the same. Like it gave me like the same feeling.
Yeah, I think a good catch. I think this is a good idea because this one, yes, I totally agree. Because this, at least for me, it starts from the definition is when you have you expect something to fail and it passes. This is a classic one, and also this is oriented to, I would say, to not shorter cycles of feedback loops. So when you do like too much or something like that, for example, um,
This is also when you are doing like testing after the fact, right?
after the
Can
fact,
come
totally,
this issue. Yeah.
totally. And here we have example with the integration test, like Bella mentioned before. Um, so here, the example that we're going to give is like a small example. Is this a repository that implements a repository pattern? So it's not activity record, so it uses actually the entity manager. And here we are just we want to search for something, the classic to search and to paginate, and that's it. So if we receive a query, we receive the page size, the string to search for or whatever. And then if we receive something like that, or if we don't receive, we just find everything in paginate, the classic, right? So if you want to search, you don't offer a criteria, you just want all but paginated. So I have this page, this amount, and stuff like that. But on the other hand, if you receive something, you want to search by that, like here is by name or could be by anything, and also paginated. So you have the page 1, 2, 3, 4, and also ordered, right? This page request, like it comes with the order. So the basic, let's say find a repository method, and that's it. Nothing much. And in the end, you return the page. So that's it, right? So that's the production code. So no more, not much what to say here. Just that it's receive parameters and those things. Um, and the interesting part, the part that is interesting is in the test case. So for this particular test scenario, we start to see this setup before all, which for me is fine. So we have sometimes we want to do some work in when we start the class, right? Setup before all, we pull up something and then we erase, which is fine. And here in this repository, you start to see that we load the database, what Pela said as well, like loading the database. Um, and we don't load the database at once, but we start to load the database often. So, well, with different sets of data. So we have these 100, then we have three more rows that we want to add and store that. And if you have a look on this piece of code, we are doing that because we want to store the IDs or stuff like that to do some operations later on, right? So we are doing that piece by piece because first we want to add different types of data, and also we want to store that uh, in the class to assert later on if the repository is filtering, is doing the things that's supposed to be done. And here is the same. More rows, more things, and more rows, more things, and so on and so forth. So here, for me, it's not a problem. For me, that's good, but at least for me, it starts to feel something like a heavy work, right? Or heavy lifting. Too many things inside the database, like doing that in the database. And well, so this is keep that in mind that we just lifting set up the test. And then here it actually starts the action for the test. So after we have the data for this repository to work, we start to do the test. So for example, here, what I mentioned is the repository is actually, we are trying to exercise the repository. We have these parameters that you want to do, the size of the page, which page, and the sort. Then we are calling the method from the repository that we want to work on. And here we start to assert, like to see if what we expect is what we want, right? So here, for example, we have this current page, we have total page, we have total elements, we have content size, and then we have this all satisfies. So for here on these assertions, I think they are good. I mean, I think they will give the correct feedback. But here is where the liar, not the liar, but here's where the trick is. This is where it leads to a test that is passing, but is not giving the correct feedback. Is passing first and not failing first. Because why is that? Because we have this sublist that it says all satisfies, and it's trying to assert against a sublist that will always exist in the previous setup that we did. So we have the list. We set up a bunch of things in the database, and then we are just asserting that a small subset that we want is in there in the database. Well, if we assert 100, of course, that 30 rows from this 100 will be always there. And with this generic logic from the beginning, it's hard to spot that. And then the test passes, and you don't know why this is passing. And here, for example, is another indication that this is something wrong. Because I don't know if you notice, let's suppose that I want to do another sorting that is descending this time. I just changed the parameters, but the assertion is still the same. Oops. The assertions here, they're still the same. Which is Ismail as well, that is saying, look, you have this something that is failing, that's not failing, and you assume that is true, right? Because it always be true. And how we can mitigate that? How can we mitigate this all satisfies or the content or whatever that we are trying to mitigate? Well, for me, this is smells that I mentioned, like the satisfies all, the method name, or the heavy setup, and not the correct feedback, they leads us to different approaches. So what could you do is to start to split responsibilities. So instead of doing the heavy lifting from the beginning and do asserts and everything like that, we could start splitting the code in a such that makes sense to focus on what is the feedback they expect. So for example, what I want to see is the products that are in the database are listed in a ascending order, right? I don't care about the paging. I don't care about if they satisfy all. And how can we mitigate that? Well, instead of doing this heavy lift in the setup out, I can have this just three rows, and that's it. So it's easier to assert, and you make the test more reliable. Let's say quote unquote reliable, because you are avoiding logic that gives you the feeling that the test is passing, but not, and then you think that this is correct, but in reality is not giving the correct feedback. So here there is, we mitigate, we put this kind of thing aside, and then we just do like hard coded part, and then focus on what we want. And the assert here is the same. So if you see this paging input is the same. Here I'm just avoiding to, if you notice, I'm just avoiding passing the page, the size, because for this test I don't care. So I don't care. I just want the feedback for the sorting. And in the end, I actually assert on the order that I want. So no more heavy lifting, no more stuff like that. And with that, I try to mitigate this risk, right? And then I don't need to work with magic numbers, because if you notice in the other example, oops, in the other example we had like a few magic numbers. Let me go back here. So if you see those 30, 112, why is 112, right? Total image. Why I need this 112 in this test case? Why I need this 4? Why I need this 0? So does it matter the size here if I'm worried about the ascending order, right? So we start to mitigate that. And then it's the same with the descending. So here we just change what is the order that I want to fetch the data. Instead of like from 1 to 3, I want from 3 to 1, the order, right? And the test is the same. I just want the same feedback, but with a different sort criteria that is descending now. The test keeps the same and gives me the feedback. And no more, if you notice, no more like these false positives that we said, because while practicing, the false positives usually comes from generalizing the code before you have the test failing, and you say, oh, okay, this is the feedback that the test is failing, and then I'm going to replace that with a hard code, and then I'm going to replace that with a more generic way of doing things. Another thing here, it's the pagination. So I said that to remove the pagination, right? So don't worry about that. But still, we need to test that, right? So how we can test that? So here, this is my suggestion to avoid this false positive, right? So how can we do that here on the shortlist products? Well, if I'm worried about the pagination, I think here is the same setup. I'm inserting more rows that I want to test. But here, I think it makes sense to assert on the bit that relies on the pagination, that is related to the pagination. The code is the same, the repository is the same, the interface is the same, but I'm just selecting the specific part of this code that I want to assert. And for this code, I think it's totally fine. This approach, I think is totally fine. So you want to assert the list, maybe the test name could be a bit better. But here I see the same situation that we faced when mixing assertions with the behavior and stuff like that. Because for me, for example, I see that I want to see the list. Okay, that's fine. But there are two different test cases here. One is which page am I at, and how many pages do I have? And this is we are going to see the in the last anti-pattern. But here, this is my own takeaway would be to even this test to split them. For example, instead of having one that asserts two of them, to have one test that represents what I want from this repository. And of course, like starting with the failing test first, because this is a small setup, so you can see that what's failing. So here, for example, we could start with the page. Like what happens when the page has the I want 10, right? Because here now I start to give the parameters that I want from a repository to work on, to act on. And then in the end, I just assert on the total pages. And the second test is the same. Instead of having, I don't care about how many pages I have. So in the second case, I care that if I give this size, I want to be on this page. So whenever I want, whatever parameter that I give you, I want to be on this page. So then you just assert the same setup, the same story, but you just assert this specific property. Why am I sharing that? Because for me, those are approaches that you can start to mitigate this way of asserting and having these false positives. So small chunks, like as the we know, like baby steps, and then piece by piece. Here you would have two different test cases. And we have the last one. I don't know, Pela, do you want to say something about this one? Because I know this is a source of conflicts. People has different opinions on this one, on the split or not. It's totally fine. That's why I say that's fine to have the same assertion on the same test.
Yeah, and here I think one important thing is to always see the test fail. Maybe we are
Correct.
sometimes we forgot about that little step, but running a test, seeing it fail is really important, also to prevent these kind of cases.
Correct.
And I have two questions for you, Mateus. One,
There you go.
do you have an antipattern that is called fail against all odds for the flaky, or doesn't exist? If not, that would be a good one. Uh, and the other one, wouldn't this also be related to the, well, we are going to see it now, the next antipattern, the
Yes.
free ride?
I
But
will start
wouldn't
for
also this cause this antipattern that trying to reuse the same setup, trying to reuse much as you can and making this generic stuff like refactoring and making something generic to reuse it would also cause this kind of errors.
I will start from the last one. So I don't think that there is a fail. No, the first one, the fail against all odds. I don't think so. So it's a good one. So like you can put your stamp there. Yes, this is related with the next one, that is the free ride. But you mean like if we generalize the code, when you say like if we are not is this an anti-pattern to not generalize the code, the assertion code? Is that correct?
To generalize, yeah. So
To,
then you end up with
okay,
this
okay.
success against all odds. Yeah.
I think you nailed that, saying the key. I mean, the message. What is the message? Look, start with the failing test. I think my opinion here is like TDD, or if you start with the test first, is read the error message. Uh, the error message or the feedback from the test failing is more important than having it passing. So if you see the test passing first, take a step back and see what is going to what happens, and have the error message. So and then what I'm saying that you hit then you hit the thing because it's not an anti-pattern to generalize code assertion code. You can generalize test code, that's fine. But if you do that, make sure that you have the feedback failing first. It's not an pattern, but make sure that you do that. Also, the the X unit book uh, says that it should be like you don't put branches on the test code. So if you generalize, for example, the satisfy all map. If you do, I saw a lot of maps. If you do map or whatever, you're creating a branch in your code, right? So you're creating logic. So the question that they put on the X unit is, who is that testing that? Who is testing the test? If you're generalizing the code, you need to test it. So we will test the test, or when will this inception stop? So that's the thing. I think that's why the suggestion here is to break it down, see the test failing, and the way to see it failing is to break, see the test failing, and then go for it. Don't try to test everything at once, and then if the test passes, that's fine. No, try to go for the red one first. Okay, so if you don't have any more questions, I will start with the last one. That is the free write that is related with the assertions. Yes, yes. And here I would like to. I don't know if people is there, but I would like to give you a small challenge. So the challenge here is just to read this code. This code is from Puppeteer, actually. So in the last episode, we tried to do this live, but we had some issues with the connection. So I'll give like just 10 seconds for you to read this code and just read and take notes or just read and give your opinion. Hmm. Don't need to don't need to give your opinion now, but just see the code, see how it goes. Like take notes on what you think. And then if you're ready, so just take meta notes. And then if you're ready, I'm going to show another piece of code. It's the same. It's the same task, but written in different way. And I will give 10 seconds as well, just to give mental notes and stuff like that. And that's so to make it a bit easier. So we share this side by side. And my first question is, could you spot? I mean, I don't know if they're in the chat or I don't know. Could you spot anything weird?
We get something in the chat that says, about if in a test, it seems to me that this is a smell. What do you think about it?
There you go. Besides the smell, yeah, totally agree. Besides the smell, could you spot any other pattern? Yes, that's correct. I don't know. This is weird. I know that's weird asking, but it's just there is no right or wrong, but it's just like a more conversation. But yeah, totally. If else in the test, which leads us. So if you spot the if else, could you spot anything else, Sophia or maybe Pilla, besides the if else?
Um, Good question. I think that, for example, the if is Chrome, else by default is Firefox, and this is
Yes.
sounds.
What happens? What happens is Edge.
Serge is saying that he thinks that the first one is not flexible.
There you go. And then also the name, right? So if you see like should work. Ah, nice. So imagine that you have to mitigate that on the pipeline or whatever. should work,
Been
and it
there,
says
done
sh-
that.
Yeah,
should work is failing.
nice.
So actually, this is the free ride. So if you spot that, this is for me is a categorization of the free ride, which you tried to, on this case, you're supposed to do something like that, right? Because it seems like there are two different test cases. Or, for example, in the previous example, the repository, but instead of splitting that, you just took a shortcut and then let me add this code path here. And yes, this brings issues when it's not flexible. It brings issues that you're adding a branch here. Again, X unit saying like don't do that. And yes, totally correct. So
And I
well,
think this is also
Yep.
coupled, right?
Uh,
Related to what Sergey is commenting in the chat. Like if we need to add something else, it will be a pain. So I
correct.
agree with that because if else the default value probably in the implementation is Firefox, but as soon as we change the implementation, this test
Correct.
will no longer be valid. So
Correct. Correct.
why couple to implementation as well? Yeah.
Correct. Totally agree. Which makes no sense, right? Because I assume, let's pretend that we want to support Edge. Why should Firefox, like if it works with Firefox, why should it fail? So, yes, totally. And this is, yeah, so this is the free ride. So instead of doing that, so you just create a test case. So here we have another example. It's the same project. And by the way, don't here the intention is not to blame anyone, not to blame any project. It's just to share this common like common understanding or the ideas that came out in the anti-pattern and stuff like that. So just sharing that. It also is an open source project, so you can go there and see for yourself. Here we have the same piece of code that is it requires a bit of setup, but the idea here is to set up this and then start to assert uh, on the output and see if the requests are failing. So once I request to this page, I should see all this failing uh, status code, like the headless browser. Puppeteer is a headless browser that you can. It's used by to create bots and request page and stuff like that. So this test is just doing that, like checking that error or a failure when you request something that is not there fails. And then we have another if else inside the test case. And then last, we have another expect. So when I saw this code, I said, it's a bit weird, the indentation, right? So the indentation is weird. And then I don't know if it should be here up or should it be here. So does it matter the order? But why we have this if else here? So there are some concerns here because this is also spots another thing that is why not have another test case for that, right? And not only that, this is a Jenkins again from example from Jenkins. We have this tool compatibility that we have a bunch of Maven installation, Ant installation, and JDK installation. So if you see here, why I'm saying that's free, right? Because what is tool compatibility, right? So you want to test that it's compatible with all of this, right? But when you read the test method, is this easy to spot that which tool should be compatible with? So the takeaway here, so this is for me a free ride because maybe it's just you just want to add a new, you're not sure, right? You just want to add another assertion or expectation, whatever. And then you don't want to create a new test for whatever reason. But here, I think the takeaway is there is no harm. Like if you create, like it should be compatible with the tool. Maven, for instance, or Ant, for instance, for a JDK. Because if the test fails, you know, like this test is that JDK is not correct, is not compatible, or is maybe it's and is not compatible right away, right? Uh, but here you say like you don't know if which tool is failing. You just say like bar is not equals get home, and you don't know what it is about. And that's it. Don't know if we have any comments on that. If not, I will just wrap up. But that's it. I think the free ride is something that we can discuss. But I think that's it.
I think the free ride is really, how to say it, not common, but you know that it's so easy to add an extra session there, and you say, okay, I add my extra session here and keep going, and that's it. I
Yeah,
finish my day. Instead of adding a new test to test specifically what you want, right?
correct.
And actually, today I did it in my work. so, so
Nice.
thank you, Mateus, for this.
We get
Well,
a comment in the chat that says like it seems to me that it breaks the single responsibility principle, which is worth following in test 2. So after separating the concerns, it will make more sense.
yeah,
And that is related to the last example with the two compatibility method.
yes, correct. But here is difficult. What Bella mentioned is true because I faced this. I wrote code a lot of assertions like that. But this, I think, is related with the success against odds. When you expect something to fail, it just passes. Why I'm saying that because this comes from the feedback loop when you practice the TDD, right? So you should refactor the code as well. So if you see that something is not expressing itself, so if you run the test and you see it like I'm seeing what my tests exactly are doing. If not, I can refactor that and try to break it down. And also, it has if it makes sense. Don't add like a new test just because yes, but if it makes sense.
Could this be related to the Dodger anti-pattern that you presented some
The
meetups
Dodger.
ago?
Yes, yes, yes. Dodger. Yes, totally, totally, totally. And it's difficult. I think it is difficult. And then, yes, single responsibility. Yes. And also, I now that we are talking about that, I remember that I think the Uncle Bob says like if your as specific as your test gets, the more generic you code will be. So like if you write a lot of tests like a specific, so you can start to generalize more your test. So I think this is also something to think about. Well, talked a lot, but I think that's it. We have the all the four more. Follow a post. We'll follow up with a post. I would like also to mention that we have a series, like a previous series that we had other colleagues joining. You can see like everything in the Codurance publications page or here in Livestorm. The videos are available. This is also related how to build a testing culture that I think is really nice because we can come here discuss a lot of things like what should be good, correct, or whatever. But this, if you're a team or where you work or with a project that you want to build this does not have this sense is sometimes it's difficult. And keep an eye on the next events that we will have at Codurance. There are something a lot of things like coming next. And that's it. That's it from my side. So no more things to add here.
So thank you everyone for taking part of this event. Thank you to our great speakers. We will be sharing this video in our social media just in a few days. And yeah, as Mateo says, keep an eye on our events. There are some super interesting events coming, and we would love to see you there again. And remember that the next session is the last episode on this anti-pattern series. So super excited.
Yeah, and then just keep an eye because maybe we are going to present other approach to anti-patterns, not only that one. And so nice to
I will
Thanks,
be
Sophie.
sharing in the chat form for feedback about this event, and if you have any kind of comment, you can put it there, or you can reach us in any social media that we have.
There you go.
And thank you very much for the invite.
Thank you for coming, Pela.
Thank you for joining. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Hope to see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.